You know, one of the biggest questions that has kind of been floating around ever since word first broke that Paramount was looking to acquire Warner Brothers. And then, of course, the tidal wave. Well, now Amazon is making bids. Now Apple is making bids. Netflix has called them to express interest, like all this kind of stuff. One of the big questions has been, what will happen with James Gunn? Will James Gunn still be the head of DC if Apple gets it, if Paramount gets it, whatever? Now, I did a topic on this a little while ago where I gave 3 reasons why he could not be there anymore and 3 reasons why we should expect him to be there. And amongst the reasons why I believed it's possible that once Warner Brothers gets acquired, that maybe James Gunn doesn't keep his job was because sports analogies, when a new GM comes in, sometimes they just want their own people. They just want it to be their regime. They want to, clean house a bit and install their own people. Nothing wrong with that. And there are a couple other reasons like that, right? Now, I still, at the end of the day, believed, and we talked about this even just the other day, that whenever Warner Brothers gets bought, James Gunn will still be there because he's one of the reasons you want to buy DC. Well, at least for one studio, it sounds like if they get Warner Brothers, unless James Gunn wants to leave, James Gunn is still going to be the head of DC, as is being reported over at Bloomberg that Paramount plans to keep Warner Brothers largely intact, and they get more specific when they write the following. Paramount Skydance Corp plans to keep much of Warner Brothers Discovery Inc. intact if it merges with the rival film and TV studio, a decision that may help address worries about job losses and production costs. David Ellison, chief executive officer and controlling shareholder of Paramount, wants to keep the creative teams of the 2 studios while consolidating some of the marketing and distribution, according to people familiar with his plans. Okay, look. When they say he plans to keep the creative teams of the 2 studios intact, I have people that I know at most of the studios. Doesn't mean I have close relationships with them, but I know most people. And a lot of times when something comes out, I will fire off emails asking for clarification. 7 times out of 10, they don't respond. 1 time out of 10, they'll say, I can't address that. And maybe about 15, 20% of the time, they'll actually give me an answer. I know a couple of people over at Paramount, and to which I wrote, I quoted this article out of Bloomberg. I says that Ellison plans to keeping the creative teams in place. And I specifically and directly asked, does that include DeLuca and Abdi? And does that include James Gunn and Peter Safran? To which they gave me a simple response. Yes. Yes. So, I mean, to be fair, that's fairly clear in the article. I probably didn't even need to write and ask, but still, I did write and ask for clarification. Is Ellison's plan of keeping the creative teams in place, does that include DeLuca and Abdi, which you and I, Rob, would have been shocked with the winning streak that DeLuca and Abdi have been on if anybody got rid of them. Also, not to mention, David Zaslav just gave them a massive new contract to ensure and guarantee their positions there.
And also, they're old school. I mean, they go back decades now in terms of, Mike DeLuca started out cutting his teeth at New Line in the 80s.
I mean, so they are locked in, and apparently as long as James Gunn wants to stay, him and Peter Safran are going to continue running DC. So there's been this narrative going around online is that, I read on Gus's gas station movie reviews.fart that James Gunn is out. Well, apparently it's not true. James Gunn is going to be the head of DC. And I think this is important. Now, look, while I loved the new Superman, and I loved it. Man of Steel is still my favorite. Henry Cavill is still my boy. But I loved the new Superman, despite the fact that it's not my all-time favorite, but I still loved it. I love Peacemaker, despite the fact that I didn't like the finale. But I love Peacemaker overall. I'm excited to see where they're going. There's still a lot to be seen, right? There's still a lot to be seen. How does Clayface turn out? That's a big swing. Clayface is a big swing.
Yeah.
How does this Supergirl movie work out? How does Man of Tomorrow work out? How does Lanterns work out? That's important. honestly, to me, that's the key to all this. If they can make a Lantern show that truly hums and works, I'll feel really good. But even though I think James Gunn and Peter Safran off to a really good start at Paramount or at Warner Brothers and running DC, I still think there's a lot to be seen. So, but with the start they're off to, and the fact that they seem to have brought back from the dead this decaying, rotting corpse of what was the DC brand on the big screen, we thought it would be very difficult to imagine a studio wanting to start over again or to scrap that, but rather see where it goes. I think it makes sense now that David Ellison is saying, oh, I'm keeping DeLuca and Abdi, and we're keeping James Gunn and Peter Safran. Now, that doesn't mean, Rob, that after Clayface, Supergirl, Man of Tomorrow, Lanterns, and whatever else is coming after that, if some of those things misfire, that's not to say that in 2028, 2029, we may not see Paramount want to change things up and maybe remove James Gunn and Peter Safran at that time. But it sounds like for now, they're like, no, the smart play here is to keep going with James Gunn and Peter Safran. They've resurrected this brand. Why would we not? Rob, I'm not surprised to hear this. I know there will be some people online who will be surprised to hear this and will probably deny its validity, but you hear this. Does this make sense to you? Are you surprised, pleasantly surprised, not surprised at all? What do you think?
Well, you know, a lot of the time when you hear about corporate mergers and corporate takeovers, the new overlords want to put their people in place, their loyalists, whatever, and get rid of the old guard, which I totally understand. But in this case, when you have creators and studio executives, what are you going to do? Go look for people? Tell me who's better than Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca with their experience. There are very few people on planet Earth who do have that experience. I mean, Mike DeLuca was at New Line when Lord of the Rings was made.
Yeah.
You know, he was there when the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, was winding down and they were looking for something else to do. I mean, he's been there for a long time. And so why would you get rid of that experience? I mean, yeah, is it expensive to keep that knowledge around? Yes. But what Hollywood really needs is institutional knowledge. And I think James Gunn, you want to look back at his career. Look, he's been making movies. He's been making movies since the 90s. He's working on his third decade of making films. And whether you like his DC Universe take, you can't deny that he's done things like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are a great, successful trilogy for Disney, $2 billion plus franchise. You look at his indie movies like Slither and Super, both $3 million movies that did well. He's produced other really interesting stuff. He was a studio writer on things like Scooby-Doo. I mean, the guy's got incredible experience, knowledge of how to work in Hollywood. You know, you don't get rid of people like that, especially when they're making you money. And especially when they're in the middle, like it was pointed out, Warner Brothers is building. I think you said it yesterday. You know, they built up, or you said it. You talked about the stock going up to $75 million. And it's like, or 700, whatever it was. It's gone
like
up.
75 million.
75 million. I mean, you don't do that. And you keep it intact because that way you don't have to, you hit the ground running. The merger takes place and you don't miss a step. It's great. I think it's what they're doing is great. The only thing that worries me is the political machinations behind the scenes of these two companies coming together and owning TikTok and all that. I think that's concerning overall in terms of wanting to keep democracy going. But in terms of keeping movies going, I think it's a good plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you have to. And you know what? I don't doubt for a second that if Apple ends up winning this battle and gets Warner Brothers, they're going to keep DeLuca and Abdi and Peter Safran and James Gunn. I think if Amazon wins this battle, they're going to keep those four. Yeah. I think if NBC Universal Comcast wins this battle, I think they're going to end up keeping those four.
It's the template.
Yeah, I mean, especially, you don't do another DC reboot right now, especially when the one you're doing is working. Because what they've done has been far more successful than anything DC did in the previous crop of years. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. But guys, a lot of uncertainty still surrounding the Warner Brothers takeover, but it looks like one thing is kind of locked. On the studio side, on the Warner Brothers studio side, you're still going to have DeLuca and Abdi. On the DC studio side, you're still going to have James Gunn and Peter Safran. And we'll see where that all goes. And guys, are you surprised to hear about that? Does it kind of come out of left field? I think it's just another thing of Paramount kind of trying to ease the fears of the shareholders of Warner Brothers. First by saying, hey, David Zaslav is still going to be CEO and he'll be my co-CEO. He'll be my co-boss. Oh, and we're going to keep DeLuca and Abdi and James Gunn and Peter Safran. Maybe it's part of it. Anyway, whatever you guys think about all that, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.